Good evening, and welcome to Screentone Club, recorded on the 16th of September 2018. This is episode 6 of your fortnightly look at manga, with our focus on joint discussion. My name is Elliot Page. I have just spent a day acquiring a new pair of cats. Hooray! And I'm joined by the ever-lovely Mr. Andy Hanley.
I have no cats, but hi everyone. I feel bad now. I don't have any cats.
Well, you can solve that problem, believe me. I have looked at Glasgow adoption shelters previously in a moment of mild desperation. But hey, so this is Screentone Club, as mentioned, a fortnightly look at manga. We're going to be taking a look at 2 series this evening. We're going to be looking at my pick, Go For It, Nakamura, a single volume boys love comedy series, and Andy's pick of The Voynich Hotel, which is a surrealist comedy manga, I think, ? And we've also got our returning champions section. Returning champions. Oh, I should have thought that out, shouldn't I? So anyway, I'm very excited to hear what you have to say about this, Andy, because I haven't yet had the time or cojones to pick this back up again. But you've forged ahead with Dead Demons DeDeDeDestruction Volume 2 by Inio Asano, which we covered on a previous episode, and we both kind of sung its praises. And as I mentioned, I haven't had a chance to pick it up so far. But Andy, what did you think about Volume 2?
It is great, much like the first volume. I mean, pretty much everything that we sung its praises of in Volume 1 is still absolutely present and correct. Like, the artwork is still astounding, the social commentary is all there and as kind of visceral as ever. And actually, I mean, probably the most notable thing for Volume 2 is that it actually kind of covers one of the things that we sort of had a mild critique of in Volume 1, in that some of the characters that are the friends of Kodode, the main character, kind of don't get any play in Volume 1. But actually, a couple of them get a little bit more kind of backstory and a little bit more fleshed out in the second volume, which is quite pleasing. We get to see Rin's family, which is she basically has a lot of brothers that kind of feel a lot like Osamatsu-san, plus one other who's kind of like weird and out there compared to the rest of them, which, you know, isn't a lot, but it's still a little something. You get to see a bit more of her family life and kind of what her deal is. But more notably, you get to spend a bit of time with Ai, who kind of, you know, is sort of there in the background more than anything in Volume 1, but she sort of gets her own little arc in Volume 2, which sort of adds a little extra layer to some of that social commentary, because basically her boyfriend is kind of like big into a certain like pop group and their singer in particular, and he's kind of totally bought into this guy's cult of personality. So whatever conspiracy theories this kind of pop star just spills out onto the internet, like, he totally buys into, and he does that thing which we all recognize, we've all seen people do, of, if you don't believe what this person is saying, or if you don't follow everything that they say, like, in great detail, then you're not a true fan. And he kind of goes off on Ai with this one, because they're both supposedly into this band. And he gives her a lot of grief, partly because he's got other shit going on in his life that's kind of like playing on his mind, but also, you know, just out of who he is, of giving it this whole like, well, you're not a true fan, and B, also like, you know, why don't you believe these crazy conspiracies? And she pushes back hard on him, in terms of like, well, one, I don't just believe everything that I read on the internet. Like, you know, I actually try and think for myself sometimes. And B, you know, sorry for not being a true fan. And it's a really good little window into those characters. It fleshes out Ai a lot. And like I say, it adds another kind of dimension to some of what the series is saying that really works and really hits home. So that's all pretty good stuff. Again, it leans harder into the thing that you kind of mentioned primarily about the first volume, this whole idea that, you know, there's this war going on between these sort of invading, in inverted commas, aliens and the populace of Japan, that is kind of a completely pointless war, because, you know, the aliens aren't really doing any damage, but it still becomes this all-encompassing thing, which is, you know, all the government cares about, regardless of anything else going on in the world. And it kind of gets way more on the nose in terms of some of that commentary. Like, there's one moment where basically a JSDF soldier actually kind of gets killed in a skirmish or in an operation. And there's a very clear kind of panel where there's a sign that says, like, hey, like, injuries and deaths in the war against these aliens. is like, 19 people injured and one dead, versus like 200 plus people injured in car accidents in the same day. And it can't really be any more on the nose, almost a little too on the nose in terms of saying like, hey, by the way, like if you hadn't noticed, this is the point I'm trying to make here. So there's some of that. And going into the third volume, it seems like it's gonna put a bit more focus on like the alien invaders themselves. Like it's sort of the other missing link that I'm not sure quite how I feel about the idea of it being explored, but I guess I'm willing to see what it does. But it's very much set things up to say like, hey, we're gonna take a little look at the alien point of view. Like, what are they doing here? What's their take on all this stuff? Like, what's their deal? So it seems like Volume 3 is going to be the one that digs into that side of things. So I will continue to read. I'm interested to see where it's going. But Volume 2 still some really great stuff.
Yeah, that sounds really fascinating. I mean, digging into the side characters in particular and having a character be like, oh, you haven't watched 1,000 hours of YouTube by certain Canadian, disgraced academics, you aren't a true fan, or you can't debunk anything this person says because you haven't watched 1,000 hours of videos. Like, what? Like, worryingly prescient of our current time, especially if you are too online for your own good. But that sounds fascinating. The screenshots you posted in our group Google Drive already look pretty good of like, oh man, what's this? So excited to pick this up when I can. One thing, you mentioned the whole deaths or injuries board. It's very sort of like, yeah, we get it. Like that you were already motioning in this direction, and anyone who's not kind of missing the point entirely would have seen that coming. So, I suppose hopefully it's out of their system and they don't need to worry about keep showing that again, because we get it. But that's one of the nice things was it was implied and obvious and just taken that, this quote unquote war is a complete farce.
Yeah, it almost felt like that particular panel almost felt like Asano just drawing a line under that to say, hey, I've said my piece on this, I'm probably not going to go back to it, but just this is the period on the end of the sentence, as it were, because it feels like that is kind of that as far as kind of digging into that goes. But I think the screenshots are representative of some of the more amusing moments of the volume. Like Ontan is still great in all sorts of ways, etc. So still lots of good stuff there.
Yeah, the one thing I will say is that at the end of the first volume, it dropped the slightest hint about, you will get to see the alien side about it. And I think we even mentioned in the episode that I don't really care. I don't care about the it seemed like you can totally do an aliens side talk and discuss things from their end. And I'm sure if I have faith in one person to do something interesting and not shoot themselves in the foot with it, it's Inio Asano. But equally, I feel like it's, there's a gun pointed at the foot of the manga at this point, and if they're not careful, it's going to pull a trigger if it isn't handled well. It'll be so easy just to undermine it or make it very flat and boring by being, look, it's the alien side. And it's like, don't care. It's cool, go ahead, try it. But, it's so easy to mess that up, honestly, I feel. And I'm more interested in seeing things from the lopsided point of view because it's way more illuminating than trying to balance it. So yeah, I'm interested to see how they do that. Equally, I worry greatly that there's no need for it to exist, but we shall see. Again, I'm behind on this, so we shall see. Yeah,
I'm totally on board with that myself. And the kind of chapter or so that you get that sort of seems to be leading into that. My biggest concern about it is that it's very much a case of this is exactly what I'd kind of expect you to do with this sort of thing. So I hope it can do something to sort of break out of that mold, because it is your pretty kind of archetypical, if an alien, landed on Earth, what would their deal be? What would that be like? And it's it's been done so much in fiction, and, there's I'm sure there are a multitude of ways that it can kind of work with that and do something different or have something, valuable to say about it. But yeah, the glimpse that you get from Volume 2 does kind of only bolster that worry a bit of this maybe isn't what I've come to this series for. But like you say, if I trust anybody to make something interesting out of it, it would be Inio Asano. So sure, I'm willing to give it a shot.
Yeah, because the main sort of reason I understand that you would have the aliens' point of view is to, shine the mirror on humanity and go, look, you think we're the invaders, but you're all messed up. And it's yeah, cool, but the manga is already perfectly good at showing that through the human characters without the aliens at all. So anyway, we shall see. I need to pick up the second volume. I'm behind. So damn it, Andy, you've sold me another volume of manga. But then I feel like everyone I talk to gets that feeling about me anyway. So there you are. So cool.
It's kind of what we're here for.
Yeah, what, ruining our own wallets?
Yeah, and other people's.
Yeah, totally. Jesus. Cool. So that's great. I'm really excited about that. Damn it. Cool. So next onto our stuff for this evening. First and foremost, if you don't mind, will be my pick, which is a manga I've had my eye on for a little while, but never really quite got around to buying. So I thought, hey, let's use this podcast as an excuse to plunge in. And it is a one-shot manga called Go For It, Nakamura by Sunday, which I think is a pseudonym. It's published by Seven Seas. It's all complete. It's one volume. It's available from all good digital bookstores. I believe it's out physically as well in like a slightly bigger version. It is about the main character Nakamura, who is a gay boy who is like second year of high school. He is gay. He knows he is gay. He doesn't like run around yelling at everyone about it. You don't really know his status or whether he's out to his friends or not, but he's kind of a loner. He's very, very anxious. He's very shy. He worries about being picked on for his personal his both being gay and also his own personality. So he's quite introverted, and he kind of catches glimpse of this rather chestnut-haired boy called Hirose, who is kind of like the ultimate in like non-offensive boys monthly cover star, in that, you know, he's moderately athletic, he's not the smartest person, but he's very, very easy to get on with and tends to make friends easily. And so Nakamura basically falls head over heels for Hirose, and basically spends most of the volume trying to like get up the wind to even talk to him and exchange words in a coherent fashion. Of course, this does the whole thing where he quite often tries to talk to Hirose and then panics and says something stupid or runs away because he's so shy, which is frankly relatable. And yeah, it kind of goes on like that. It's very comedic. It's got a nice little comedic bent. It doesn't take itself too seriously. It's like a set of like individual like chapters that were written individually and then compiled together into this volume. And they have a vague overarching sort of set of characters and a storyline. And by the end, it's kind of come to a nice conclusion where like it's clear it's only had one part of the story, but it's had the part you want to see done. So I was kind of glad about that. It felt to me quite slow in the offing. Like it sets itself up very quickly because it's easy to set up the premise, and then flounders for quite a good long while, much like the protagonist himself. Kind of acquiring side characters, setting up loads of different threads, and then towards the end quietly sort of snips them all down, and then has a good few chapters at the end where it actually does slightly resolve like the main tensions that arise in like a nice, heartfelt, but also not too sort of firm manner. So it's just like, hey, you know, we've all learned something here today, end of afternoon school special sort of thing. If nothing else, you know, Nakamura learns to not be so self-conscious and not really care about what others think, which is also something that Hirose at some point has to learn. So, you know, it's that nice after-school special type feeling. That I really like the actual main part, which is like page one is just Nakamura saying, yep, I'm gay. What? Like, and that's great. It's great that like it's not just this thing where you get the stupid like boys love or like, you know, sort of boy love thing of like, oh, but I thought I liked girls. I'm very confused. Do. Let's have 4 volumes of this. And it's like, no, whatever. Nakamura likes Hirose. Maybe it's a one-sided thing. He even thinks maybe it is. But he's just like, yeah, this boy's cute. What? And that's great. It's really nice that it just sort of skips all the bump and gets onto the actual, you know, sort of, you know, worries about the whole thing. So I really liked it in that way. The art's quite cute. It has quite a lot of sort of funny like uses of turns of phrase and sort of like, you know, obviously Nakamura being quite introverted, he has quite a lot of internal mind space sort of pictures and panels and such, and little sort of running gags. It's well drawn in the main. It looks quite nice. It has some good expressions, especially when Nakamura is like, you know, pantsing it about talking to someone. So that's kind of cute. Well drawn octopi, very important in this manga. Octopi are a recurring character and theme. Cause, you know, it even has like the Great Wave, like visual gag in the first like double page spread. And like the one thing I like is it is a one shot, like it's done. Like by the end, it's not like it's finished everything, but by the end of the volume, you're like, yeah, there's no real need to continue with this. Like you've done what you want to, and I'm perfectly happy with it. But I will say the middle a bit kind of sagged and left me kind of flipping through it faster. And I was like, oh no, please don't just turn into a bunch of endless, no resolution one shots, because that would be kind of intolerable. But thankfully it doesn't. Hooray. But yeah, I liked it in the main. It's not like going to blow your socks off, but I thought it was a perfectly nice, refreshing, like breath of fresh air. And it certainly wasn't quite as like, as damning as something like, My Lesbian Experience of Loneliness, which is another amazing gangbanger, but it's hard to read. But that's in a whole separate queue. So Andy, what did you think of it, seeing as I forced it on you?
Yeah, I mean, I think kind of inoffensively fine is probably my kind of overall feelings about it. Yeah, like you say, like the whole fact that the main character is just gay and like that's the end of that is really refreshing. Like there's no drama around that. There's not even any kind of gags at its expense, which is always the worry of this kind of thing. It's like, oh, are we going to have a lot of kind of cliched jokes around it? Like the closest we get to that is one moment where the character's just like, oh wait, maybe I'm bi, but that actually just turns into kind of like a joke around a particular story arc. It's like, yeah, okay, well, that's cool, that's fine. So yeah, that's kind of refreshing to see. I do really like the character design and the overall look of it. Like the characters, they kind of have a nice sort of, in one sense, and some characters in particular have almost kind of like an old school feel to their design aesthetic, but they also still feel kind of sufficiently sort of modern and kind of moe, much as I hate to use that word. They kind of split the difference there quite nicely. And the whole kind of style of it, it's weird to say for a black and white publication, but like it kind of feels colorful. Like you can kind of imagine the anime adaptation and all of the pastel colors that it would use right off the bat. Like in your mind's eye, you can kind of see these sort of, colorful characters in classrooms and everything. So there's a real kind of vibrancy to it that I think does a lot to kind of like help you through it, especially during its sort of quieter moments where, like you say, it does kind of sag a bit, because it always looks nice, like octopi and otherwise. Like there's a real consistency to the artwork that I liked. But I think beyond that, I mean, it kind of hits all of the usual kind of notes of a sort of romantic comedy, regardless of gender and sexuality. It's like it's all stuff you've seen before, of like, oh, it's the culture festival, and oh, it's the kid who doesn't have any friends, like trying to kind of get to know this person that they're interested in. And so there's nothing really particularly kind of fresh and new there. It kind of treads a lot of safe, tried and tested ground, which is kind of frustrating at times, because it just feels like, well, I've seen all this so many times before, and like you're not doing a particularly bad job of any of it, but you're also not doing a particularly amazing job of it either. I think the thing that maybe shifted me in its favor a little bit is just like the final chapter, which I really thought was great. And like partly this is because like there are slim pickings in terms of good endings to romance manga. Like so often they go for the like, we're going to resolve absolutely nothing and basically leave things kind of circling around to where they began, where everyone's in this same, everybody are these same weird kind of satellites of one another in terms of their relationship, or it just, it just kind of falls apart in some other way. Whereas the final chapter, like, yeah, maybe it is kind of like overly saccharine, but it was really satisfying to see, like, as a finale of just like, okay, that's a really nice, sweet, happy place to end this. And like you say, like as a one shot, it's perfectly fine to leave it there. There's still plenty of the story that you could tell if you wanted to go on with it, but it's just a really nice ending place of, hey, like Nakamura has made progress, like, not just with this relationship, but kind of with his life in general. Like he's learned some important life lessons. He's probably imparted some important lessons on Hirose as well. And like everything feels kind of nice. And like I sort of closed the book or closed the app in our modern times, like feeling kind of satisfied with that, of just like, yeah, that was a nice ending. Like that kind of gives me a little glow inside.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. As you say, like the thing that I really liked about the ending, and you mentioned it there, is that like it's not completely final, but also like, as you say, Nakamura learns something, Hirose learns something, and it's not like, some kind of world-ending thing. It's just like, oh, everyone kind of came out of this better as a result. Like that's really nice. Like, and who knows what will happen from here? But either way, everyone seems to be in a healthier mood and a healthier place, which is, frankly, much, it's nice. Frankly, it's nice. I like it for that reason. In fact, I feel like I like it more than if it was a slam dunk sort of like quote unquote success. And it's like, no, how do you measure that? So yeah, I really enjoyed it. as you say, I really agree with you on your point about it being colourful. Like, it always felt very vibrant and full of, life in a weird way, where it's like, oh no, these characters are all like, moving, active actors in this place, and they are all doing stuff, even if all they're doing is like, cooking at school. It does very much, as you say, feel like they're hitting every checklist item down the list, including the whole life drawing class gag, which, I feel like anime school art departments are way more progressive than anything in the UK. Because if you'd have suggested life drawing when I was growing up, you'd have been shot. So yeah. We did manage to play with lino tiles though. That was fun. But yeah, unless you got anything further, I think I'm about done with that series, honestly, or talking about it even.
Yes, yeah, I think so. I know we had a Twitter comment from Demel's Award asking whether we felt it was complete enough as a single volume, or would you prefer for it to be longer. I think we're both on the kind of one volume was pretty much perfect for this, even though there is more you could do to progress that story. Like, I feel like it works nicely in that self-contained single volume form.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I mean, the one thing I'll say is that, like, it has this contradiction of feeling a bit slack in the middle, but I wouldn't like it to be any longer in terms of actual, like, pages. But if it could, like, do a little more of its middle sort of trench, that would be great. Although the school play arc was bewildering and quite funny, but also, worked really well. So that was nice to have that. But yeah, it was a nice little one shot thing. Sometimes you don't want like a 23 volume battle 'em up. You just want something nice to get in, tell a story and get the heck out. Because, you look at some comics, quite a lot of them, especially Western comics, and it's like, good grief, just let it end, please. Oh my God.
Yeah, it's refreshing to have a short story that just has that beginning, middle, and end, and then you can kind of go away and say, yep, okay, I completed the thing, like, without another 200 volumes to worry about.
As some, at the risk of like starting a holy war here, and I do not mean to, but given the recent success of the Marvel Spider-Man video game, which came out recently, I thought, ooh, I wonder if I can dip into a little bit of Spider-Man. And then I looked at a reading guide and immediately nearly fainted because, oh my God, I forgot how bananas Western comics is with how it organizes everything. And I just walked away. I'm very sorry. I'm sure there's great Spider-Man comic out there, but I ain't got time for all that. I thought it was bad enough reading the Higurashi arcs. Anyway, so moving on to our next thing this evening. I'm very excited to hear what you have to think about this, Andy. And this is the Voynich Hotel, Volume 1, by Dowman Sayman. I think I mentioned this on the very first episode of this podcast, and I was kind of shocked that this had actually been released, and also very glad. This is also out from Seven Seas. It's finished in Japan. It's only got its first volume out here. There's a total of 3 volumes to be released. And it's available from all good digital storefronts. I think it's available digitally as well, but I haven't clapped eyes on it. Anyway, sorry for the preamble. Andy, what did you think?
Yeah, so I mean, it was entirely down to this getting mentioned in the first podcast that I kind of had it in the back of my mind to pick up for a while, because you kind of sold it on to me pretty succinctly there. It's like, okay, that it sounded like one of those things where I'm either going to absolutely hate this or I'm going to really like it. But as it turns out, I really like it. So all is well with the world. Yeah. So the story is basically about a young man named Taizo who is. We join him going on his first holiday abroad, except it turns out it's kind of not a holiday as the manga progresses, or an enforced holiday, perhaps you could call it. And he's kind of ended up on what is basically kind of a war-torn island in a very ramshackle hotel. And it's a pretty odd hotel, which attracts some equally odd guests. And the first volume really is mostly kind of a series of vignettes. It has almost a kind of like sitcom-esque kind of setup to it. And a hotel kind of works really well for that because, you can have recurring characters who are there, every week or in every chapter. But you can also kind of cycle in and out different characters and basically do whatever the heck you like with the cast. Because, hey, it's a hotel. Some people might be staying there a long time. Some people might just be there for a couple of days. Some people might just be passing by. And so it works really well for that. And as kind of mentioned up top, like it's a pretty surreal and weird series. Like the guests encompass everything from a manga artist, of course, because you always have to have one of those, I guess, to a serial killer. You've got drug dealers. There's a robot. All sorts. It hits a lot of different notes during the course of its first volume.
One quick thing. I think we're up to at least 3 serial killers at this point. At the end of the first volume, maybe? I don't know. I lost track of how many killers there are.
Yeah, probably. I mean, there is definitely there's a fair amount of murder and would be murder going on around the place. So yeah, like I kind of didn't focus on that too much, but yeah, there is definitely some murder going on around these parts. But yeah, and kind of some of that also leads into the fact that although there are these vignettes, there are some kind of ongoing through lines as well. That is kind of just enough to sort of keep me like, oh, okay, well, I want to check out Volume 2 just to see what happens with some of these through lines, which sometimes is the problem when you have all these kind of like sort of disparate elements, is it's like there's nothing to hook you in for future volumes, because it's like, well, I've enjoyed what I've seen, but, there's nothing to remind me to go back for Volume 2. But there are some interesting little through lines here. But I know that, for starters, this is a volume that is really confident in its comedy. Like, it doesn't try to over-explain anything. It doesn't kind of overly elongate any of its gags or things that it does. It is always kind of to the point and does exactly what it intends to do, and then it stops and moves on, which is something that I always really like. Like, there are numerous comedy series, both inside of manga and anime and outside of that, take jokes and run with them until they're dead. And, that's never any fun for anybody. But this is always very good at kind of knowing what to do and how long to do it for. It's like there's one particularly good example in terms of like this first volume's visual comedy, where a couple of the characters are basically like going on a date, and so
I knew
you
were going to talk about his joke. I knew it.
And it's like the girl's like, okay, well, I need to figure out what to wear for this, and it splits it perfectly into like a few panels of the girl kind of running over to the guy waving, and he's like looks, waves back. Then there's a panel of his reaction of just like, what the heck? And then there's the panel that drops down to what she's actually wearing, which is just like, it's a perfect bit of kind of manga based comic timing. Like, it's absolutely, it would have been a good joke regardless, but there are so many ways in which you could have kind of like blown that too early by not having enough panels for it, or just dragged it out for too long, and it just gets it absolutely bang on for kind of maximum comic effect.
Yeah, the most powerful part of that entire gag, I feel, is the fact that, like, something's going to go stupid with this because you've seen the build up, but then the payoff is one panel, the very next panel is like the end of the joke, and then it's done. Like, it cuts the joke, it says, okay, if you didn't laugh at that, whatever, moving on. And if you did laugh, here is the payoff, here is the joke, and here is the, like, secondary joke afterward for another laugh. And then, poof. And that takes some balls to, like, just go, yeah, joke done, move. And it just carries on. And it's great because it knows when to do that.
Yeah, and given that this is, like, a fashion-based joke as well, like, my assumption almost was that they were going to just run with this like for the entirety of the date. Oh, okay, she's going to wear this like dumb outfit, and it's just, this joke's just going to keep coming back. But nope, like she just changes into something else for the very next panel, and it's like, nope, we are done. And likewise, this one has a fair amount of like referential humor in it, and again, like very much the same thing. Like, it doesn't feel like it has to explain its references. It doesn't throw out ridiculous amounts of references. They're there. They're pretty, measured and occasional. If you don't get them, then hey, like you're straight onto something else. It doesn't really matter. If you do get it, it's a good joke, and it doesn't try to kind of again over explain it. Like, there's a really good Dragon Ball Z reference in there that was just like, wait, what did she mean? And then I just like glanced back up the panel before that. It's like, oh, I totally get that. That's actually really good. And it's like little things like that. Yeah, like it's a really good little joke, and that's kind of what kept me going through this, because it's just like the humor, it's not all going to hit for everybody. Like, it's given that it's quite varied, like there are some bits that are going to kind of fall flat or maybe not be interesting, but like it had more than enough to kind of keep me amused and entertained. It has a decent number of characters that are just like, yeah, I'm kind of into you and your thing. Like, you're cool. I want to see more of you. And all of that kind of blends together to be a really entertaining read. Like, it's kind of, when you look at it sort of on its surface in terms of sort of the narrative and the storylines and kind of like even some of its setups, like it feels like it probably shouldn't work. Again, there are so many ways this could have gone wrong, but it all just kind of hangs together, sometimes like by the skin of its teeth, admittedly, but it all hangs together in a way that just absolutely works from kind of beginning to end. And like I say, kind of makes me want to read the remaining volumes just to kind of enjoy some more of it, and just to keep up with some of the stuff going on, to see where the heck it goes next.
Yeah, talking about sort of it hanging on by the skin of its teeth, I'm kind of with you, not quite as intensely perhaps, but I feel the thing that kind of helps in this regard is that even towards the end of the volume, when all these disparate elements start coalescing into what might turn out to be a storyline, or at least sort of ruminations on a theme, or like just different orbits around a central plot line or thing that's going on, is that none of it feels like it's mission critical. Like no one storyline or any character set feels like they are like the key to everything that you must understand, or nothing will make sense, which is a blessing, because like if everything in this volume was required to understand the storyline and keep moving forward, it would kind of be insufferable. It would be real tiring to read. I don't know if you quite follow me or agree with me on that, but it is the fact that like you can basically have parts that you glaze over at or don't like so much that's fine. Like you're not going to be completely screwed over as a result.
Yeah. I mean, it feels like a series that doesn't particularly care about its end game, and kind of actively encourages you not to care about it too much either. Like there are points in that volume where I think like, oh, okay, this is going to be the big thing that is going to kind of become the centerpiece here, and then kind of, you know, the volume ignores it for God knows how many pages again, and then it kind of creeps back, and it's like, oh, actually, maybe this wasn't so important. I kind of forgot that had happened. I mean, again, like one of the many serial killers, like suddenly it kind of gets mentioned as a big kind of flashing red light of like, oh, okay, this is going to be an important thing, and then it sort of just disappears for quite a while, and then suddenly crops up again. It's like, oh yeah, there's that serial killer, huh?
Yeah, I feel like it's a good combination of various different, like, almost Gonzo style elements. It gave me a flashback to like, well, this is a bit of a stretch, so forgive me, but you know the games by Suda51, you know, Killer 7 and the like.
Yeah.
It gave me a vague feeling of that, where it's going to throw stuff at you, and you don't need to understand all of it, but it'll be a fun ride. And like, I think they also made a game called Flower, Sun and Rain, which is equally about a weirdo with a suitcase going to a deserted island hotel, which was equally full of weird people and defusing bombs or something. That game was hard and also completely bonkers. Thankfully, this manga is easier to read than that. But yeah, there's tons of good gags in it. And towards the end, like, it's one thing I'll say that I think in particular is that it's very short chapters, like 9 pages. It's like 22 distinct quote unquote chapters in this volume. And so it kind of burns through stuff real fast. So, you know, even if you don't like a storyline, like, it doesn't last long, which is a blessing. Like, and, you know, it's so disparate that even when it starts coming together at the end, you're like, oh, okay, this is how this is going to start maybe coming together, but I will remain to be surprised, perhaps.
Yeah.
The one thing I'll say, that in preparing for this podcast, one thing I found out that I didn't know before is that it is 3 volumes total in Japan, which I'm actually really excited by in a way, because this being 3 volumes is way more palatable than it being, say, perhaps 10 or 8, because I feel like having this much disparate stuff over that long a time span, when it looks like how it's starting to coalesce, feels like it would be exhausting. But having it be 3 volumes, I'm like, oh, okay, 2 more. I'm a third done. Let's see how the rest of this goes. Because it has weird lore. Like, it has this sort of history of the hotel and the war that's ravaging the place, and the history of the characters and all these different serial killers. And, you know, there's clearly stuff going on here. And the one thing I do like as well is that different characters can see different things. Like, I won't say any more for risk of spoilers, but... And also, like, some characters just lie, which is always a tricky thing in fiction, especially, you know, manga. But, like, having characters who just outright lie about stuff, and then later on you're like, oh, this person was lying. Okay. Like, I like it when the author has confidence to let characters lie without having a speech bubble, a thought bubble next to them saying, I'm lying. You know, that's powerful stuff, and something I appreciate when it happens. As long as it doesn't turn into like frigging, Nissio Witten style lying, where it lies to you even though you're supposed to be the confident. What the hell?
But yeah, again, I think it speaks to that confidence that kind of runs through the entire volume. Like, everything that it does is very much like, hey, this is what I'm setting out to do, and that's the end of it. But yeah, it kind of, overall, it almost kind of reminds me of sort of, there's almost sort of a Britishness, I feel like, to its comedy. Like, there are some very definite, like, Monty Python-esque moments, but it also reminded me of stuff like Spaced in particular was like a thing that I kind of hit on as a touchstone of, like, it has that kind of same feeling of just like, here's a reality that also has this kind of flip side of surrealism to it. And it quite happily, like, bounces between the two whenever it takes its fancy, and it somehow manages to make those two things hang together in a way that keeps you engaged. Like, there's definitely kind of it feels I could totally imagine this being like a weird kind of Channel 4 late night sitcom.
Totally. God, all we need now is the goddamn like shirtless robot wars episode, if you remember. Man, I haven't seen Spaced in ages, but all my memories of it like totally hold up. Like that is that's a fascinating show. Don't know how it will last nowadays, but whatever. But no, I really like this manga. I'm glad that you suggested it because I was going to anyway. I like the art. The art is very sort of chunky. There's not a lot of screen tone used. There's a lot of very thin lines and very sort of strange angles to character that make them look quite sort of chunky and angular but not too like blocky and huge. Or graph papery. It's very sort of like clearly demarcated areas for hair and such and clothing, and characters look very like they have a lot of straight lines, but they're straight lines that are all askew. Like, characters don't have like completely pressed t-shirts. Hell, the main character admits at one point that he hasn't changed his clothes in 2 weeks, which causes everyone to freak out because that's gross. So that was a good gag. But yeah, I like all the characters so far, like even the completely reprehensible ones, because at least they're amusing. So yeah, I'm curious to see the rest of it. And as I say, I'm glad it's only 2 more volumes because I feel like that's my limit for, how much road they've laid for themselves in this first volume. Yeah,
for sure. I mean, in terms of the artwork, did this start out as an online thing? So it has a very webcomic-y feel.
I believe so, yeah. I mean, Dowman Sayman has been a web author for a long time before this was ever picked up. Like, he's done a lot of, like, I believe he was a digital native sort of artist and did a lot of doujins and such. But yeah, I believe is mostly a web author.
Yeah, because that's definitely like that's sort of how the artwork feels. And again, like it totally works for it. And I liked it. Like I think that the character designs really work for it, and yeah, like it's not any kind of visual magnum opus, but again, it has a confidence to it, and it does everything that it wants to, and that's kind of all you can ask of it.
The main thing I can say is it definitely has some comedic sort of styling. Like at one point, someone gets shot, and it's comedic in how it shows the bullet wound, which is a hard thing to pull off without making it look grisly, frankly. All the characters are definable. Like you can see, who the characters are in their expressions, and it all works and it separates them out nicely. So it all looks very distinct, which is frankly nice. So yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's good fun. Like the comedy won't be for anybody, and won't be for everybody. Rather, that's a slip of the tongue. Like again, like if you don't like that kind of slightly off the wall comedy of something like a Monty Python or a Space, like it possibly won't sit with you. For me, that's something that's very hit and miss. Like I can watch or read some things like that and absolutely love it and loathe others, which is why I was kind of like, I wonder which side I'm going to come down on this, but definitely came down on the positive side. So very, very happy that I picked it up. And yeah, I think I will be reading the remaining 2 volumes whenever they appear in English.
Yeah, I mean, I'll definitely back you up there and say that, if you like a bit of gallows humor, that's good. But one thing I do like in particular is it doesn't have much cringe humor, which I am very bad at. Sometimes it will work, but oftentimes not. So thankfully, not much of that. Cool. So moving on, we're going to talk about what we're going to be talking about next time in 2 weeks. So that'll be right at the end of September. So I feel like we've put a gun to each other's head with this episode's choices. So it had to happen at some point, I suppose. So first and foremost, I have decided to pull the Band-Aid off of light novels. So apologies, Andy, but hey, I warned you earlier in the week. So I have decided or suggested that we read An Archdemon's Dilemma, How to Love Your Elf Bride, which recently came out on J Novel Club, I believe, and is now available online. I've got my copy on my tablet. It's a light novel. It's not that long. It sounds dumb from the synopsis, and it sounds like the right kind of dumb. Hopefully, it doesn't dip into like rampant misogyny and like wish fulfillment like some light novels have. Hit shield hero. So yeah, here's hoping. But yeah, apologies, Andy. But hey, you were warned and given first refusal.
Yeah, to be fair, because I'm trying to get my things in order ahead of time. I actually read it all today, so I'm already primed. I've done my homework, teacher.
What the hell? Overachiever. This isn't allowed. You're a podcaster. Oh, my God. How dare you? Oh, I actually am impressed, actually. I'm also very thankful because if you could read it in the entire day, I'm sure it's not that bad and I can read it on the bus.
Yeah. It's a couple of 100 pages and it's not massively, taxing to read. So, yeah, you can probably burn through it pretty quick.
Cool. Given that I've been reading like 1930s political treatises recently, I think this will be lighter fare somehow.
Yes, yeah, I suspect so.
Yep. Okay, Andy, so what have you lined up? You've also broken the rules, but hey, we also agreed this was fine.
Yes, yeah. I mean, I was quite happy not to break the rules, but my choice for the next podcast is Sayonara Football, which combines two things that I like. One of which is football, as in soccer, if you're one of our American listeners, and the other one is that this is from the author of Your Line April, which is a series that I must admit I never read all of the manga of, but I watched all of the anime and absolutely adored that thing. So I'm interested to see this. But yeah, the reason that it was a slight kind of debate is that it's only 2 volumes long, so I suggested it seems dumb to read half of it and then not the second half, so how about we just read 2 volumes of manga, because we're not like Elliot picked a light novel or anything, so we've got plenty of time to burn. So we've agreed that we're going to read volumes 1 and 2 and read the series in its entirety, so hopefully it's good, because I've just doubled our workload.
Well, if it's by the author of Your Line April, maybe it will leave me a crying heap again. So great, thanks, Andy. I
mean, it looks way more cheerful from the covers. So I
bloody hope so.
Fine.
Fuck, God, bloody Your Line April, the anime series. I cannot bring myself to finish still because it keeps ruining me whenever I pick it back up again. But that's my problem. That's just me being a wuss. So hey, very good though, very very good. A+, very much recommended. But yeah, my God. But anyway, so moving on, what's coming up soon in the world of manga? So we looked at the release schedule. The most important thing bar none is that Sunshine Sketch Volume 9, also known as Hidamari Sketch, comes out on Monday, the 18th. So by the time this podcast comes out, you already have your copy, right? Right.
Yeah,
so,
I mean, this is one of those reasons why I'm glad this podcast exists, because I'd kind of forgotten about that. And I've also realized there are new characters introduced in the last volume that I've also forgotten the names of, so I feel like I might need to go back and read volume 8 as well.
Hey man, you got to go back and read about Festival. Festival's a very important character. But yeah, I'm just glad there's more of it, even though it feels weird because I have several art books and I feel like it's over with Cyan Hero graduating because it's Cyan Hero, and I've got Hero, a little miniature figure of Hero right here on my desk saying hello. So, what more do you need? And also coming soon, later in the month, in fact, just before our next episode, is that finally, my various blood sacrifices have been answered. And a whole buckload of Kaoru Mori manga is going to be coming out in digital form over the next 3 months, including her amazing work Emma, a Victorian romance, and Anything and Something, a very enjoyable anthology of her works, and also A Bride's Tale, which is the third thing coming, which has previously only been in honking great hardback edition, which is beautiful. Kaoru Mori is a savant, ridiculous. Everyone talks about how Kentaro Miura of Berserk fame draws insane stuff, and he draws really detailed artwork, except it's all elephant trunks and eyeballs and murder, except Kaoru Mori does that with maid outfits and horseback archery and butts. She's a very good study of the female form. But yeah, Kaoru Mori is amazing. I am ever so thankful that this is coming out digitally after complaining for ages about it. So please join me in helping buy all of A Bride's Tale, because it's not going to be in frigging half a kilogram book hardback form anymore. Finally.
Yeah, I mean that's really cool, because I do remember one of the recurring themes of our previous podcasting life was often you talking about said series and then kind of bemoaning the lack of digital for them, as we will want to do about various things. And this is kind of one of the big kind of outliers in terms of man, why can't I get any of this stuff digitally? So it's good that that's been fixed up and is now readily available without backbreaking physical books.
Yeah, I mean, you can still get Emma in digital, in physical omnibuses, but if I can get it in a form that is 0 grams, I'm going to do it that way. And yeah, Emma's also really, really good. The omakes by Kaoru Mori herself are fascinating, because it's very clearly she's someone who takes her work kind of serious to a scary degree. Chill out, lady. But thank you for making such amazing work. So I will throw money at it. So yeah, that's what I saw coming up soon in the world of manga. I'm sure there's more stuff, but that's the things that really matter to me. So, moving on to Closedown. First and foremost, we have our website, which is Screentone.club. That's where you can find the podcast. Podcast can also be found on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, a few others, not on Google Play podcasts. I'm very sorry to everyone who suggested it to me, but they're not accepting it from non-US addresses. I don't know why. I'm very sorry. I know it's annoying. One thing to ask, thank you to everyone who has reviewed or talked to us about the podcast. It matters a lot, and we're really grateful for all your feedback. If you do like the podcast, please tell a friend, tweet about it, leave us a review. All that stuff is like colossally helpful in tricking, quote unquote, the algorithm to, put us actually in front of people to think about reading it, listening to it even. We have a Twitter feed, which is at Screentone Club on the tweeters. I still need to get better at actually queuing up posts for that. Apologies. We have an email, which is screentoneclub@gmail.com. But more importantly, you can email to show@screentone.club. In fact, you can basically write to anything at screentone.club because I've got a wildcard redirect going on. So let's see if that works. Feel free to try and break it. I dare you. So moving on to the end, personal plugs. My name is Elliot Page. You can find me online at Elliot Page on Twitter, and my website is moesh.it. And hopefully, given that I've finally got a bit of free time, I might hopefully be resurrecting Manga Search, which is manga.ch. So that's the digital manga search engine, which is currently out of date by like a year and a half, and will hopefully be not out of date by a year and a half shortly. Anyway, sorry, Andy, I've gone long again. How about you? That's
fine. My name is Andy Hanley, and you can find me on everyone's favourite social media network, Twitter, at Hannah's1979.
For a moment, I thought you were going to say you're on the gram.
Yeah, on my MySpace.
Oh, God, yeah, good old Tom. Good old Tom. Man, imagine being Tom, the one person who, survived social media without, being destroyed by it.
Yeah, not a billionaire, but also not an asshole. So,
hey, man,
I guess swings and roundabouts.
He got paid a lot when he sold, so more power to him. He's certainly not Jack Dorsey. Anyway. Enough of that. So thank you very much for listening. I hope you enjoyed the podcast. I'm going to go and play with a new pair of kittens I've adopted today. And Andy will go, I don't know, watch football? Shrug?
Yeah, not play with kittens. That's all that's important.
Hey, man, you can easily fix that problem. Oh, dear. Right. Anyway, great. Thank you, everyone. And good night.
Bye, everyone.
Where's the button?